Imagine this. A 16-year-old girl collapses, stops breathing, and is declared dead. Her family panics. A doctor certifies the death. But minutes later, the girl opens her eyes, and she's no longer the same. She speaks with a different voice, uses unfamiliar gestures, and claims to be another woman. Shiva Tripathi, someone who had died tragically 2 months earlier, run over by a train. How can someone wake up with memories they never lived? How is it possible to recognize people and places they've never seen? This is the beginning of the Sumitra Singh case, one of the most enigmatic and well-documented post-mortem identity phenomena of the 20th century. A case so bewildering that renowned psychiatrist Stevenson traveled to India to investigate it in person, accompanied by a team of experts. What they discovered challenged the very boundaries of life and death, of memory and soul. Was it reincarnation, possession, or something even more disturbing? In this video, I'll tell you the entire story with every detail backed by real testimonies and scientific analysis. Prepare for an intense, intriguing, and emotional experience, because this is no ordinary case. Shiva Tripathi was born on October 24, 1962, in the city of Etawah, India, into a Brahmin family. Her father, Sumitra Tripathi, was a university professor, and Shiva received a privileged education. She graduated in home economics and at the age of 18, married Chedi Lal and moved to Dibiapur with her in-laws. The couple had 2 sons, affectionately nicknamed Rinku and Tinku. But beneath that seemingly stable life lay a deep conflict. Shiva, with her refined manners and higher education, caused constant tension with her in-laws. Some investigators suspected envy, others pointed to resentment over an insufficient dowry. What's clear is that Shiva was living under increasing pressure. In mid-May 1985, the tension exploded. Her in-laws forbade her from attending an exam or a family wedding, according to other versions. That same night, her uncle-in-law found her crying. She said she had been beaten by her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. The next day, May 19th, her death was reported. Her body was found on the train tracks. According to her in-laws, she had taken her own life. But the strange thing was that her body was almost intact, except for a severe head wound. Uma, her sister, described the scene. Her head was smashed, and her brain was exposed, like pulp. Most disturbing, her body was cremated hastily, with the use of flammable oil, before her father could arrive. The Tripathi family filed a complaint. The police arrested her husband and father-in-law, but they were quickly released for lack of evidence. The mother-in-law and sister-in-law disappeared for months before being captured and also released. Rumors grew. Some neighbors said they had seen the in-laws taking Shiva, still alive, to the train station that night. The local press covered the case as a potential murder disguised as suicide. The family's pain stemmed not just from the loss, but from the legal and emotional void left by the absence of justice. To them, Shiva was the victim of a cruel, silenced death. But months later, her story would be reborn in the most unexpected way, through the voice and body of another woman. Exactly 2 months after Shiva's death, on July 19, 1985, in the village of Sharifpura, a young girl named Sumitra Singh was sweeping her yard when she suddenly collapsed. Her body lay motionless. According to witnesses, she wasn't breathing. A local doctor was called and confirmed the unthinkable. She was dead. The family began preparing for her funeral. Days earlier, Sumitra had predicted her own death. She had also experienced trance episodes in which she appeared to be possessed by other entities. But then, the impossible happened. Minutes later, Sumitra opened her eyes. Her gaze was different, distant, strange. Her voice wasn't the same. She didn't recognize her parents, her baby, or even her own name. The first thing she said was, "I am Shiva Tripathi and I was murdered in Dibiapur." Sumitra, born in 1969, was just 16. She came from a humble Thakur caste family. She had only studied up to 8th grade, married young, and had a baby. But in a matter of minutes, her entire past seemed erased. She began speaking fluently about people, objects, and places she had never been taught. She remembered the town of Dibiapur, talked about her husband Chedi, and asked to see her sons Rinku and Tinku. Her family thought she had lost her mind. They subjected her to exorcisms and even physical punishment to expel the spirit. But her new identity remained unchanged. She even wrote a letter pleading to be taken away, signed it as Shiva, and begged for help. One of the most remarkable statements she made was about having been taken before the Hindu god Yama, where she witnessed karmic punishments. The goddess Santoshi Mata, whom she worshipped, had hidden and protected her until Yama granted her 7 more years of life on earth. From that day on, Sumitra ceased to exist, replaced by a new identity. Her way of speaking, her gestures, even her literacy level changed dramatically. People who knew her were shocked by the transformation. How could someone who could barely write suddenly compose coherent letters? For many, there was no explanation. For others, it was clear Shiva had returned. As days passed, the new personality in Sumitra not only solidified, but began to demand something specific: to reunite with her previous family, Shiva's family. The young girl insisted on seeing her children, her father, and returning to Dibyapur. While her current family believed it was delusion, they started to wonder if something more was happening. That's when the story reached the ears of Shiva Tripathi, Shiva's real father. At first, he thought it was just another rumor following the mystery of his daughter's death. But persistent whispers convinced him to send someone to investigate. 3 months later, on October 20th, 1985, he traveled to Sharifpura himself. What happened during that encounter defied all logic. Sumitra, never having seen him before, burst into tears at the sight of him. While some say she may have known who he was beforehand, her reaction was authentic. When shown a family photo album, she correctly identified 6 people in a photo taken 18 years earlier, including her grandmother and herself as Shiva. She also recognized 5 of the Tripathi children in another image, and more relatives in other photos. The most striking moment came when she saw a photo of Shiva's youngest son, Tinku. Sumitra broke down crying and asked where Tinku and Rinku were. Then she pointed to a woman in another photo and said, "That's Ramakanti, the one who hit me with a brick." That statement convinced Ramsiya completely. Shiva had returned. In total, Sumitra accurately identified 23 people from Shiva's life: friends, uncles, cousins, siblings, even a childhood friend she hadn't seen in 8 years. Some were recognized by voice, others by forgotten details that surprised the family. In contrast, Sumitra could no longer recognize anyone from her previous life. Not her husband, her son, her cousin, nor even her own father. She also displayed confusion about common things, like asking, "Where's the bathroom inside the house?" Unaware her home didn't have one, as Shiva's did. The transformation appeared complete. The case attracted so much attention that it reached Dr. Ian Stevenson, a renowned psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, known for investigating reincarnation with scientific rigor. In October 1985, just 3 months after Sumitra's awakening, he and researcher Satwant Pasricha began a series of visits to India to study the phenomenon up close. What they found was deeply unsettling. Stevenson, Pasricha, and later Nicholas McClean-Rice conducted in-depth interviews with Sumitra, her family, and Shiva's relatives and acquaintances. They documented every testimony, recorded audio, took notes in Hindi and English, and ensured they spoke to people in multiple towns to rule out prior contact between the 2 families. One of their main priorities was to identify information that Sumitra knew but that hadn't been reported in the media or was publicly available. They found at least 19 precise statements that didn't appear in any news article. For example, a specific yellow sari that belonged to Shiva, her son's nicknames, the names of her university friends, her maternal uncle's birth order, and even the location of a box where Shiva used to keep her watch before she married. They also studied Sumitra's literacy skills. Previously, she could barely write a sentence. After the change, she wrote lengthy letters signed as Shiva, emotionally and stylistically similar to the ones Shiva had written when alive. A handwriting analysis revealed surprising similarities, though differences were attributed to the new body. To ensure objectivity, the researchers verified there had been no prior connection between the families. Sharifpura and Dibyapur are 96 kilometers apart. The castes, education levels, and lifestyles were completely different. No one could prove they had ever met. Another remarkable aspect was Sumitra's account of the afterlife. She spoke of the god Yama, of karmic punishment, and being hidden and protected by the goddess Santoshi Mata. These elements, though symbolic, matched deeply rooted Hindu beliefs and were described with intense emotional realism. To Stevenson, this was one of the strongest cases ever documented. Science had no clear answers, but the facts spoke for themselves. After her transformation, Sumitra, or Shiva as she insisted on being called, lived for 13 years under this new identity. And she did so with such conviction that even the most skeptical people began to doubt the impossible. The Singh family, initially confused, eventually accepted that the young woman was no longer the daughter they had raised. Jagdish Singh, Sumitra's husband, faced an unimaginable situation. His wife no longer recognized him. She didn't want to be near him or their child. Instead, she showed deep affection for Shiva's sons, calling them by their nicknames, Rinku and Tinku. For a time, the Tripathi family took them in. Shiva Tripathi, Shiva's father, said, "You see the body, but not the soul." Her sister Uma said, "She loved me just as before, only the face was different." However, over time, the relationship between the families faded. The Singhs returned to Sharifpura and contact dwindled. Over the years, Shiva showed sadness at being in a body that wasn't hers. She would point to marks on her foot and face, saying, "These scars remind me this body isn't mine." But she never abandoned her new identity. She kept Shiva's way of speaking, writing, her expressions, and even her religious practices exactly as Shiva had. Slowly, the community accepted her. Although she never fully reintegrated, she lived between two worlds. According to Jagdish's brother, their mother was uncomfortable at first, but later got used to it. Sumitra died in 1998. Until that moment, she lived and died as Shiva. The case of Sumitra Singh has been interpreted in many ways, as reincarnation, spiritual possession, or even as an extreme psychological phenomenon. But none of the explanations quite fit all the pieces of the puzzle. Ian Stevenson, a pioneer in the scientific study of reincarnation, proposed a typology that includes replacement reincarnation, a rare phenomenon where a soul replaces another without the body dying. These cases usually happen after serious illnesses or traumas, and while most involve young children, Sumitra was a rare exception. Other researchers like James Matlock also support this hypothesis. What's curious is that for the 13 years following her resurrection, Sumitra never returned to her old self. The change was total and permanent. Some psychologists suggest it may have been a severe dissociative identity disorder caused by childhood trauma or social pressure. However, that theory doesn't explain how Sumitra could have such precise knowledge about another person she never knew. Her descriptions of the afterlife, involving the god Yama and the goddess Santoshi Mata, were consistent with Shiva's religious worldview. Furthermore, her sudden improvement in literacy and her spontaneous recognitions of people and objects still defy logic. So, what really happened? Was it a supernatural event, a psychological illusion, or the strongest evidence that consciousness survives death? Decades later, the Sumitra Singh case still baffles experts. And perhaps, as Stevenson once said, science does not yet have all the tools to understand what the soul is capable of. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and tell us in the comments, do you believe in replacement reincarnation? This was the case of Sumitra Singh. Until the next mystery.